Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin. A reckoning in mathematics often arrives quietly, without fanfare, emerging from the mind of a single individual wrestling with a problem that has humbled generations. In the bustling city-states of Renaissance Italy, however, mathematical prowess was a public spectacle. It was a currency of reputation, contested in open squares before crowds of students, patrons and rivals. A mathematician's career could be made or broken in a single afternoon, his standing determined by his ability to solve challenges posed by an adversary. These intellectual duels were a defining feature of the era's academic life, a vibrant, high-stakes theater where the abstract beauty of numbers met the raw ambition of men. Within this world of fierce competition, one problem stood as the great unscaled peak, a challenge whispered about in university halls from Bologna to Padua. It was the solution to the general cubic equation, an algebraic puzzle that had resisted the finest minds since antiquity. The intellectual inheritance of the Italian peninsula at the dawn of the 16th century was rich and complex. The works of classical Greek geometers were being rediscovered and disseminated, while the more recent, and in some ways more practical, legacy of Arabic algebra formed the bedrock of commercial and academic mathematics. Through the efforts of figures like Leonardo of Pisa, better known as Fibonacci, the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, and the algebraic methods of the great 9th-century scholar Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi had become integral to the curriculum of the Maestri d'Abaco, the reckoning masters who trained the merchants and bankers of Florence, Venice, and Genoa. Solving linear and quadratic equations, equations of the first and second degree, was a standard, almost routine procedure. These were the established tools of the trade, reliable and thoroughly understood. A formula for the quadratic, an algorithm that could dispatch any equation of the form an x squared plus b x equals c, was a common possession. The cubic equation, an expression containing a term raised to the third power, represented a formidable barrier. It was a challenge of a different order, a leap into a higher dimension of algebraic complexity. While a quadratic equation could be visualized through the geometry of areas, dissecting and rearranging squares and rectangles to find the length of an unknown side, a cubic equation demanded a reckoning with volumes. This geometric intuition, which had served mathematicians so well for centuries, became profoundly more cumbersome when dealing with cubes. The brilliant 11th-century Persian polymath Omar Khayyam had explored this very territory, producing an elegant and exhaustive classification of cubic equations. He had even provided solutions for each type through the meticulous intersection of conic sections, parabolas, circles, and hyperbolas. His work was a monumental achievement of geometric reasoning, yet his solutions were constructions. They were drawings, elegant and precise, that revealed a line segment whose length corresponded to the answer. What the mathematicians of Renaissance Italy sought was something different, a universal, algebraic formula. They desired an algorithm akin to the quadratic formula, a sequence of arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the taking of roots, that could be applied to the coefficients of any cubic equation to yield its solution directly. They sought a key, a purely symbolic machine that would unlock the problem without recourse to drafting tools and geometric figures. For centuries, this key remained elusive. The problem stood as a silent rebuke to the ambitions of algebraists, a puzzle that defined the very limits of their science. At the heart of this intellectual ferment was the University of Bologna, one of the oldest and most venerable centers of learning in the Western world. Founded in the 11th century, its reputation was immense, its halls a magnet for scholars from across Europe. It was here, amidst the arcaded streets and ancient lecture rooms, that Scipione del Ferro held the chair of arithmetic and geometry from 1496 until his death in 1526. His position placed him at the core of the mathematical world of his time. He was a university professor, a public official of knowledge, tasked with transmitting the established canon to the next generation. His students would have learned the fundamentals of Euclid, the commercial arithmetic required for trade, and the standard algebraic techniques inherited from the Arabic tradition. Del Ferro was a respected, if perhaps unassuming, figure within this formal academic structure. His professional life, however, was shaped by a powerful and contradictory force, the culture of academic secrecy. In an age before peer-reviewed journals, before the rapid and widespread dissemination of scientific papers, a new discovery was a form of personal property, a private weapon to be guarded with the utmost care. A novel solution or a powerful new method was a mathematician's primary asset, the source of his competitive advantage in the public challenges that so defined his world. To publish a result, to share it freely, would be to arm one's rivals. Consequently, breakthroughs were often kept within a tight circle, passed down from master to student as a secret inheritance. Del Ferro's notebook, the repository of his private thoughts and discoveries, was a document of immense personal value, its contents a source of power and security. His most profound work would be conducted away from the public lectern, in the quiet of his own study, driven by the knowledge that a solution to the great cubic problem would grant him a form of intellectual immortality and an unassailable reputation among his peers. He would have been acutely aware of the monumental nature of the task. The history of mathematics is filled with such long-standing problems, challenges that serve as milestones for entire eras. The quest to square the circle, to double the cube, and to trisect the angle, using only a compass and straight edge, had occupied the Greeks for centuries. In Del Ferro's time, the algebraic solution to the cubic equation held a similar status. It was the frontier of the known mathematical universe. To solve it would be to demonstrate a mastery that surpassed that of the ancients and the great minds of the Islamic Golden Age. It was a problem that required a profound leap of imagination, a willingness to manipulate symbols in ways that perhaps even broke from their comfortable geometric interpretations. For Scipione del Ferro, working diligently at the University of Bologna, the cubic equation was more than an academic puzzle. It was the defining challenge of his generation, a lock for which no one had yet forged the key. The entire edifice of algebra awaited the mind that could finally turn it. The intellectual lock that Scipione del Ferro set himself to pick was an equation of the third degree. Specifically, he focused his considerable intellect on a simplified or depressed form of the cubic, an equation of the structure x cubed plus p times x equals q, where p and q are positive constants. This focus was a stroke of strategic brilliance. Renaissance mathematicians understood that any general cubic equation, with its term for x squared, could be algebraically manipulated into this more fundamental form through a clever substitution. Solving this one specific class of problem was equivalent to solving them all. The challenge was immense, a puzzle that had resisted the finest minds for centuries. Its solution demanded a departure from the comfort of geometric proofs, which had served as the bedrock of classical mathematics, and an embrace of a purely symbolic mode of thought. Del Ferro's breakthrough was an act of profound algebraic artistry. He began with a substitution of breathtaking ingenuity, positing that the unknown variable x could be represented as the sum of two other unknowns. He let x equal u plus v. On the surface, this appears to complicate the problem, replacing one unknown with two. Yet, This was the very move that would unlock the equation's hidden structure. Substituting this expression into the depressed cubic yields a new, more complex-looking equation, the quantity u plus v all cubed plus p times the quantity u plus v equals q. Expanding this expression reveals its underlying potential. The term u plus v cubed becomes u cubed plus 3 times u squared times v plus 3 times u times v squared plus v cubed. The full equation then reads u cubed plus v cubed plus 3uv times the quantity u plus v plus p times the quantity u plus v all equals q. A moment of insight here allows for a powerful simplification. The two middle terms can be factored, revealing the original substitution. The equation becomes u cubed plus v cubed plus the quantity 3uv plus p all multiplied by the quantity u plus v equals q. Since we know that u plus v is equal to x, this is a transformed version of the original problem. Here lies the fulcrum of Del Ferro's method. He now had an equation with two unknowns u and v, which gave him the freedom to impose a second condition. He could define the relationship between u and v in a way that served his purpose. He made the inspired choice to set the term multiplying u plus v to 0. That is, he stipulated that 3ub plus p must equal 0, or rearranged that u times v must equal negative p divided by 3. This elegant maneuver causes the entire middle portion of the expanded equation to vanish completely. What remains is a beautifully simple statement: u cubed plus v cubed equals q. Del Ferro had successfully converted a single, intractable cubic equation in one variable into a system of two equations with two variables. The first equation is u cubed plus v cubed equals q. The second, derived from his imposed condition, can be cubed on both sides to become u cubed times v cubed equals the negative of p cubed divided by 27. He now faced a new yet familiar problem to find two quantities, specifically u cubed and v cubed, given their sum, which is q, and their product, which is negative p cubed over 27. This is a classic problem that can be solved using a quadratic equation. Imagine a new variable, let us call it t. We can construct a quadratic equation whose roots are u cubed and v cubed. That equation is t squared minus the sum of the roots times t plus the product of the roots equals 0. Substituting the known values gives t squared minus q times t minus the quantity p cubed divided by 27 equals 0. This was an equation that any competent mathematician of the 16th century could solve using a method equivalent to the modern quadratic formula. The solution for t would yield the values for u cubed and v cubed. The final steps of the solution then fall into place with a cascade of logical precision. Solving the quadratic equation gives two values for t. One value is u cubed, the other is v cubed. Taking the cube root of each value gives the specific numbers for u and v. Since Del Ferro's initial substitution was x equals u plus v, the solution to the original cubic equation is found by simply adding these two resulting numbers together. It is a stunning intellectual edifice, a chain of reasoning that moves from a cubic to a system of equations, to a solvable quadratic, and back to the final answer. The key had been forged. The lock was turned. This purely algebraic path, however, led to a deeply unsettling philosophical destination. In the course of applying his formula, Del Ferro would have inevitably encountered the situation known as the casus irreducibilis, the irreducible case. This occurs when the cubic equation has three distinct, real-world solutions. Paradoxically, in these very situations, the application of his formula forces the mathematician to take the square root of a negative number. For instance, the quadratic for t might yield solutions involving expressions like the square root of -121. To the mind of the 16th century, such a number was an absurdity, a phantom. There was no physical or geometric reality that corresponded to it. Yet, the method worked. If one proceeded with the calculation, treating these impossible quantities with the formal respect of algebra, manipulating them according to its rules, they would eventually cancel each other out, leaving behind a perfectly real, tangible, and correct solution for x. The journey to a real answer required a passage through an imaginary realm. This was the profound and perhaps terrifying implication of Del Ferro's work. He had solved the cubic, but in doing so, he had uncovered a fundamental strangeness at the heart of mathematics. His solution was a testament to the power of symbolic manipulation, demonstrating that algebraic forms could possess a truth and consistency independent of any immediate physical or geometric interpretation. It was this discovery, this forced confrontation with what would eventually become the field of complex numbers, that marks Del Ferro's true and enduring legacy. His solution did more than answer a question. It posed a new one, far deeper and more consequential, about the very nature of number itself. The possession of such a profound insight into the structure of algebra presented Scipione del Ferro with a choice unique to his era. The modern ecosystem of academic journals, peer review and institutional credit for discovery was a distant future. In the intellectual landscape of Renaissance Italy, a discovery of this magnitude was a form of currency, a source of personal power, and a shield of professional security. Public disputations and mathematical challenges were the primary arenas for establishing reputation, securing university chairs, and attracting the patronage of wealthy nobles and cardinals. A unique, unsolvable problem, or more accurately, a uniquely held solution, was the ultimate weapon in these intellectual duels. To publish the method for solving the cubic equation would be to surrender this immense competitive advantage, casting it into the public domain for any rival to claim and utilize. Consequently, Del Ferro elected to guard his discovery with absolute secrecy. For decades, the solution remained his private treasure, a key that unlocked a whole class of problems previously thought intractable. It was a testament to his confidence and perhaps a reflection of his position at the University of Bologna, which provided him a degree of stability that made constant public self-promotion less urgent. His legacy, he determined, would be curated through a more intimate and controlled process of transmission. As his life drew to a close around the year 1526, he followed the established tradition of a master craftsman, passing on the innermost secrets of his trade. He confided the complete method to two chosen successors, his son-in-law and fellow academic, Annibale della Nave, who would inherit his professorial chair, and his student Antonio Maria Fior. Fior was a mathematician of middling talent, a figure whose ambition far outstripped his conceptual depth. In receiving the formula from his master, he inherited a powerful tool without a full appreciation for the delicate, almost paradoxical, reasoning that underpinned it, particularly the strange passage through the realm of impossible numbers. To Fior, the formula was a sequence of operations, a guaranteed method for producing a correct answer to a very specific type of problem. He saw it as a key to fame, a way to catapult himself into the first rank of Italian mathematicians by challenging and defeating a formidable opponent. For nearly a decade, he held on to this secret, waiting for the opportune moment to deploy it. That moment, he believed, arrived in 1535. His chosen target was a man whose brilliance was becoming impossible to ignore, Niccolò Fontana of Brescia. Fontana was a figure forged in tragedy and immense intellectual fortitude. As a boy, he had been left for dead during the French sack of his hometown, a soldier's sword slashing across his face, and leaving him with a permanent speech impediment. This injury earned him the nickname by which he is known to history, Tartaglia, the stammerer. Rising from poverty and physical trauma, Tartaglia had become a formidable self-taught mathematician and engineer in Venice, renowned for his work on ballistics and his sharp, practical intellect. He was precisely the kind of high-profile rival whose public defeat would bring Fior the glory he craved. The challenge was formally issued. According to the conventions of the day, each contestant would propose 30 questions for the other to solve within a set period. A sum of money, deposited with a notary, would go to the victor. Fior, with a confidence born of his secret knowledge, crafted his 30 problems with a singular focus. Every single one was a variation of the depressed cubic equation, the specific form x cubed plus px equals q, the very type for which Del Ferro had bequeathed him the solution. He imagined Tartaglia, a brilliant but unsuspecting victim, dashing himself against this algebraic rock, unable to find a purchase. It was a strategy of overwhelming concentrated force, reliant entirely on the exclusivity of his inherited weapon. Tartaglia, upon receiving the list of questions, immediately perceived the stratagem. The uniformity of the problems was suspicious. It signaled that Fior possessed some special algorithm, some hidden trick. Tartaglia's own questions, sent to Fior, were a diverse collection, touching upon various topics in geometry and algebra, designed to test a broad range of mathematical competence. He realized with a sinking feeling that he was at a severe disadvantage. While Fior would be tested on his general knowledge, Tartaglia faced a single, formidable barrier. Failure to surmount it would mean total defeat and public humiliation. The pressure was immense, the deadline absolute. What followed was a frantic period of intellectual struggle. Tartaglia threw himself at the problem, driven by professional pride and the looming threat of disgrace. He later recounted the desperate race against time, the sleepless nights spent exploring every conceivable algebraic and geometric avenue. He knew the solution had to exist. The very nature of Fior's challenge was proof of it. He worked from first principles, pushing the boundaries of the known algebra of his day. He manipulated equations, substituted variables, and sought a geometric interpretation that might shed light on the abstract symbols. The story, as he tells it, reaches its dramatic climax on the night of February 12, 1535. With the deadline mere hours away, in a flash of profound insight, he found the path. He had done it. He had independently derived the general solution for the depressed cubic. His method, born of necessity and brilliance, was functionally identical to the one Del Ferro had discovered decades earlier. It was a stunning example of near-simultaneous discovery, separated only by a wall of deliberate secrecy. The moment the logical structure of the solution became clear to him, the contest was effectively over. Armed with his newfound understanding, Tartaglia turned to Fior's 30 problems. They were no longer an insurmountable wall, but a series of simple exercises. He is said to have solved all of them in less than 2 hours. Fior, in contrast, was completely undone. Faced with Tartaglia's varied and genuinely challenging questions, his single, specialized tool was useless. He struggled mightily and failed to solve a significant number of them. The outcome was a rout. Tartaglia's victory was absolute, his intellectual superiority demonstrated beyond any doubt. Fior, the would-be giant slayer, was exposed and humiliated, his brief moment in the mathematical spotlight ending in ignominy. With this spectacular triumph, the guardianship of the great secret changed hands. The knowledge that had been Del Ferro's private legacy, passed down in quiet confidence, was now the possession of a new master, one who had earned it through public battle and sheer intellectual force. Tartaglia, like Del Ferro before him, understood the immense value of what he now held. He too would treat the solution as a closely guarded secret, a source of power and prestige, unaware that his victory had set in motion a chain of events that would soon draw the attention of an even more ambitious figure in Milan, a man whose desire for knowledge would ultimately shatter the very culture of secrecy that had defined the saga thus far. News of this intellectual duel, and the powerful secret it unveiled, travelled swiftly from Venice. It reached the ears of a man in Milan, whose ambition and intellectual appetite dwarfed all his contemporaries, Girolamo Cardano. A physician, philosopher, gambler, and mathematician of staggering genius and complexity, Cardano was then compiling a monumental work, a definitive treatise on the state of algebra. He intended this book, which would become the Ars Magna, or the Great Art, to be the most comprehensive survey of algebraic knowledge ever assembled. For such a work to be complete, it required the one prize that had eluded the greatest minds for centuries, the general solution to the cubic equation. Learning of Tartaglia's triumph over Fior, Cardano immediately recognized that the key he sought was now in the possession of the Venetian maestro. He initiated a correspondence, inviting Tartaglia to Milan, with promises of patronage and prestige. Tartaglia, wary and protective of his discovery, initially resisted. He understood the secret was his primary intellectual asset, the very foundation of his hard-won fame. Yet Cardano was persistent and profoundly persuasive. He lavished Tartaglia with hospitality and appealed to his desire for a powerful patron. Finally, in 1539, within the confines of Cardano's Milanese home, Tartaglia relented. He agreed to reveal his method, but only after extracting from Cardano a most solemn and sacred oath. Swearing upon his Christian faith and his honor as a gentleman, Cardano vowed he would forever hold the solution in confidence, committing it to cipher if he wrote it down, so that after his death no one would be able to understand it. With the oath sworn, Tartaglia divulged the secret, possibly in the form of a cryptic poem he had composed, a mnemonic device that encoded the operational steps for solving the depressed cubic of the form x cubed plus px equals q. Cardano, a mind of the first order, immediately grasped the depth and power of the method. Working with his brilliant and fiercely loyal student, Ludovico Ferrari, he began to explore its every facet. Together, they expanded upon it, generalizing the technique to handle all forms of cubic equations. Ferrari even used the cubic solution as a stepping stone to achieve another historic breakthrough, the solution to the quartic, or fourth-degree equation. A universe of new mathematics was unfolding from the seed Tartaglia had planted. Yet, the fruit of this labor remained bound by Cardano's oath. The greatest algebraic discoveries in centuries were to remain unpublished, a source of immense frustration for a man whose life's ambition was the codification and dissemination of knowledge. The resolution to this ethical and intellectual dilemma arrived from an unexpected quarter. During their investigations, Cardano and Ferrari learned through the grapevine of academic gossip that Tartaglia might have company in his discovery. Rumors hinted that the true origin of the solution lay decades earlier, with a quiet professor in Bologna. Following this lead, in 1543, Cardano and Ferrari journeyed to Bologna to meet with Annibale della Nave, the son-in-law of the late Scipione del Ferro and the inheritor of his papers. Della Nave, a fellow mathematician, confirmed the rumors. He opened his late father-in-law's notebooks for his distinguished visitors. There, in Del Ferro's own hand, was the very same solution to the depressed cubic equation. The date of the work confirmed it was composed decades before Tartaglia's own discovery. For Cardano, this revelation was a thunderclap. His promise was made to Tartaglia under the pretense that Tartaglia was the sole and unique originator of the method. The discovery of Del Ferro's prior work fundamentally altered the landscape. In Cardano's assessment, his obligation was to the truth of history and the advancement of mathematics. He reasoned that publishing the solution, while giving full and proper credit to all parties, upheld a higher intellectual duty. His vow to Tartaglia, a man who had rediscovered an existing method, was secondary to the imperative to share this monumental breakthrough with the world. 2 years later, in 1545, Cardano's masterpiece Ars Magna was published in Nuremberg. It was a landmark event in the history of science, the first great Latin treatise devoted solely to algebra. Within its pages, Cardano laid out the entire theory of the cubic and quartic equations, and true to his intellectual conscience, he meticulously documented the history of the discovery. He wrote, "Scipione del Ferro of Bologna, almost 30 years ago, discovered this rule and handed it on to Antonio Maria Fior of Venice, whose contest with Niccolò Tartaglia of Brescia gave Niccolò the occasion to discover it. Tartaglia gave it to me in response to my entreaties, though withholding the demonstration. Armed with this assistance, I sought out the demonstration in its various forms. This was very difficult. Cardano gave Del Ferro his rightful place as the first discoverer. He credited Tartaglia with his independent rediscovery and for providing the initial spark. He credited Ferrari for the brilliant solution to the quartic. From a modern scholarly perspective, Cardano's actions appear impeccable. He provided a clear and honest provenance for the knowledge he was presenting. Tartaglia, however, saw it as the ultimate betrayal. He exploded with rage. He felt his trust had been violated and his life's greatest achievement stolen and made public by another. What followed was one of the most vicious and public intellectual feuds in the history of mathematics. Tartaglia published his own book containing his side of the story, complete with the text of Cardano's oath and a torrent of insults directed at Cardano. Cardano himself, a man of immense stature, remained largely aloof from the fray. The principal combatant on his behalf was his protégé, the brilliant and pugnacious Ludovico Ferrari. Ferrari, fiercely loyal to his mentor, engaged Tartaglia in a blistering public exchange of pamphlets, challenging him to debates and savaging his mathematical abilities. The dispute raged for years, a bitter war of words that captivated the Italian intellectual community. Scipione del Ferro's legacy, therefore, is one of profound and beautiful irony. He was a man of his time, a scholar who operated within a culture of secrecy, viewing his discoveries as personal intellectual property, a source of leverage and prestige. He guarded his solution to the cubic for his entire life, entrusting it only to a select few. This very act of concealment, this quiet hoarding of knowledge, created the conditions for all the drama that followed. His secret became a hidden treasure, a lost artifact of the mind. Its rediscovery by Tartaglia was a moment of triumph, and the subsequent battle for its ownership between Tartaglia and Cardano became a public spectacle. This spectacle, however, had a transformative effect. The bitter feud, broadcast through the new technology of the printing press, laid bare the limitations of the old way. It demonstrated that great ideas, once loose in the world, possess a momentum of their own. The controversy surrounding the publication of Ars Magna helped to shatter the tradition of academic secrecy. It ushered in a new ethos, one where priority was established through open publication, and where the advancement of the field took precedence over the proprietary claims of individuals. Del Ferro, the quiet professor from Bologna, sought to keep his knowledge contained. Yet in doing so, he inadvertently set the stage for the very explosion that would make such containment impossible for future generations.
He is the ghost in the machine of the Italian Renaissance, the silent foundational figure whose hidden labor provided the script for one of mathematics' most important dramas. His story is a powerful testament to the idea that knowledge, however closely guarded, ultimately seeks the light, and in its release, it possesses the power to reshape the world and the very culture of inquiry itself. He remains less a public monument and more a vital, subterranean current, the unseen source from which a great river of modern mathematics began to flow.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.